So, Ryan, it's so good to be here with you today. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about your story. And I'm gonna give the floor to you to tell the story that you've told me a little bit about, but I'm so curious to learn more about. Tell us what's important for us to know, where your story intersects with spirituality and what's important for you today.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a small town, Paradise, California, which is the northern part of California. And like, I just summarize it, and then I'm assuming you'll get into the questions. But Paradise is the community that was literally burnt to the ground in 2018. A little history of me, besides being born and raised in Paradise, I also coached basketball at Paradise High School. I'm a big basketball guy. So I not only played at Paradise High, I coached at Paradise High for about 18 years. And I was still coaching at the time that the fire happened. I was a youth pastor in Paradise, California as well for 21 years. Such a privilege to be able to serve my local community, the community that invested in me when I was growing up. And then just to be able to give back to that same community was just an absolute blessing. It was like a dream, to be honest. Um, the fire happened and life changed for not just me, but for our entire community, just like that. And so, we'd had some evacuation scares in the past. But if you know Paradise, Paradise is a town that is covered by a canopy of pine trees and oak trees. And so once the fire got into town, it was, it was a combination of fire and really high winds. And it was November, right after a really long and dry summer. And so the combination of all those things meant just a recipe for the worst disaster that you could ever imagine. And it just meant a complete, like, everything that I knew, everything that I held secure and found comfort in was like the rug pulled out from under me in just a matter of a day. So that's just in brief the story, my story, and what happened in Paradise. And I'm game for you to ask any questions because I'm sure you're going to have lots of curiosity around what actually happened there in Paradise.
Well, I don't want to skip the the hard part of the story
Mhm.
because my first thought is what happened next? Like I, I I live in West Virginia and we occasionally have small wildfires, but nothing that reach has ever reached where I live
Yeah.
in a more city as much as big of a city in West Virginia as it could be.
Yeah.
Um, but what's that like? Like how do things unfold? And
Hmm.
if someone's like me who has really limited experience to know about evacuation scares around fires, um, how was that day or that experience different?
So what's unique about Paradise is there's only a few ways into Paradise, which means there's only a few ways out of Paradise. And while it is a small community, it still has 30,000 people. But when there's few ways to enter and exit town, when you have a fire and everyone's trying to leave at the same time, it just creates a massive, like, the worst traffic jam that you can imagine. And so just a little context for me, that morning I was actually at the gym. I was running on the treadmill. And it was just a normal morning for me. And in the middle of my run, the manager comes up to me on the treadmill, because I had my earbuds in, taps me on the hand, and I stopped the treadmill and took my earbuds out, and he say, "You got 30 seconds to get out of here, and we encourage you to leave Paradise immediately." And I had been a part again. I'd been in the community where we'd had scares before, and I was like, oh, come on, give me a break. Here's another like alarming situation, but it's not going to be anything. And when I walked out of the gym that morning, there was debris falling from the sky. There was smoking debris falling from the sky. When I got into my vehicle, I saw ash on my car. I saw like burning leaves like coming down, not burning, but like smoldering. And I was like, oh dear, this is serious. This is a lot different than the other fire scares that we've had in the past. Now, did I listen to the instructions to just leave town? Of course not, because I wanted to go back home. Our family had like in the event that a fire would happen, we had like, important stuff that we wanted to take with us. And so I went back home Meanwhile, my wife, she teaches second grade, and she gives me a call and says, hopefully you've heard by now there's a fire. It's actually getting closer to the school. We're actually starting to hear sounds of things blowing up. And she was scared. And she basically said, stop packing anything, get here as soon as possible because we need to evacuate all these students off of campus. Because, parents were trying to get to school and they couldn't, they were gridlocked. And so she asked me to come to the school. So obviously I did that. My son had come home. He had just got his license, just got his first vehicle. He had come home and I said, Jackson, you're going to go with me, and I want you to park your car in the garage. And so little did I know that when our house burnt down and we came back to our property, like the only thing that we could see that was like still standing was like the remains of his car. It was like just a lump. But I got stuck in traffic trying to get to the school to help these kids. And when I actually got to the intersection where it would allow me to go towards the school, there was somebody directing traffic, just trying to get people off the hill, and they would not let any cars go in that direction. So fortunately, enough people showed up to get all of the everyone off of campus, which was great. My wife loaded up her vehicle with probably more students in there than should have been in there, but at that point, it was just getting people off of the hill safely. And so that's a little bit of that story and how it unfolded. We all met down in a community that's just down the hill from Paradise, about 15 miles or so, Chico, California. That's where all the people from her school know where to meet in the event of a disaster. And so it was utter chaos. First of all, utter chaos getting out of Paradise, being gridlocked for a while and wondering, because you can see the smoke coming and the debris still coming from the sky. It's falling down. It's like, at what point is another fire going to start right next to me? And then I'm going to be in a really bad spot. But fortunately, we made it out. It was a dark, dark cloud leaving town. And then all of a sudden it just kind of broke, part way down to Chico, and you could see clear. And then on my way down to Chico, I just keep looking in my rear view mirror or my side view mirror in the car and literally watching the town go up in smoke. And there's fires where you see smoke, but this was an enormous plume of smoke. I mean, it was like the whole hill of Paradise was like it was just one huge, massive plume. And so that's, down in Chico, you could look up in the hills and up Paradise, and that's what we looked at all day long. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was just utter chaos down in Chico because they had horrendous exits of Paradise with flames on both sides of the road. They did not think they were going to make it. So they're in that traumatic state. And then I'm a youth pastor, and I've got people in my youth group showing up in Chico in the parking lot. They cannot get a hold of their parents. They do not know if their parents made it out of town, and they're freaking out. Meanwhile, you have, my wife is teaching second grade, and we've got parents that are coming to pick up the kids, but there's other parents that aren't showing up all day long to pick up their kids. And we're wondering all day, did their parents make it out? And I think we left early in the morning, probably 8:30 in the morning is when we headed out of Paradise. And I want to say the last kid in her class was picked up at 6 o'clock that night. And all day long, it was like the unknown of, did these people's parents make it? And, by the grace of God, all of them did. But still, it was once 6 o'clock hit, it was like we were just going on fumes at that point. It was like the adrenaline was high. It was very intense throughout the day. Lots of people freaking out because they were finding out their house didn't make it. One of the teachers that my wife teaches with, she found out that her house didn't make it, and all of her dogs and they didn't make it. And so you have trauma, you've got panic, you've got loss. You've got everyone experiencing something similar but different at the same time, all in like one parking lot in Chico. And it's just when everything's done, it was like, okay, well, now what do we do? Like we can't just drive back home. Every place in Chico was booked. So we ended up finding a hotel like 100 miles away because like everything local was completely booked up because you have an entire community that needed housing like that. And we didn't even think about it. We just wanted to make sure all of our youth and all of her kids were taken care of before we started thinking about our own needs. That's what that day looked like.
And I know you mentioned how many times you've told this story. Um,
Mhm.
there are so many moving pieces, and I can imagine it might be hard to think about again, or maybe it's helpful to retell the story
Mhm.
to whether that's just to continue to make sense of what happened within your own story or in ways that this helps others, that your story helps others.
Mhm.
Um, is it hard to revisit that day, or is it what's it like to revisit that day? Maybe that's a better question.
And I appreciate you asking that. I've never had a problem telling the story, but I do know people that have a really hard time telling it. And so I mean, I want to be sensitive to that. But me personally, in our family, we don't have a tough time talking about the story. To me, that was a big that story that circumstance was a big turning point in my life. So when I look back now on the fire, I mean, it sounds really weird to say because it was awful in every single way. I look back on the fire, that's the single best thing that's probably happened to our family and our lives because of what it forced us to do as a family. It forced us, and to be honest, we could have all curled up in the fetal position and whined about this for the rest of our life. We could have. And this fire, ironically, was started by the local utility company, and they claim the responsibility for the fire. And we could have sat in the corner and blamed them for the rest of our lives because of how they messed things up for us, you know? And we had a great life. We had a custom built home in Paradise that my uncle had built, and we were super proud of. Had a really big backyard. We were able to accommodate youth coming over to our house all the time, youth staff coming over to our house all the time. It was our, um, it was just a place of hospitality, and we were proud of that. We love having people over, and so having that stripped away, and not only that, but like it wasn't just that. It was like losing a house is one thing, but when you lose your community and everything that you know, and it was unique to me because I'm born and raised there. Like I didn't know any other place. I mean, I went to college away for 4 years, but came back immediately to serve in my local community. It's just a different beast when everyone you know has lost everything. It's not like I lost my house, I'm gonna go stay at the in-laws' house. They lost their house too. I can't go stay at, my wife's brother or sister's house. They lost their place too. And so it was wild. Actually, my wife's sister and her husband, their family, their house survived. And and I actually feel worse for them because their house was in a neighborhood where if you looked around the entire neighborhood, if you did a 360, there was no other house that made it. And so their house survived, but it looked like it was in the middle of a war zone. I mean, to me that was the worst scenario. I mean, losing everything was awful, but I can't imagine still having a house, but it looks like it's in the middle of a war scene. And so that's that's kind of what things looked like there. I don't know if I answered your question very well. I just started rambling, but it doesn't bother
No,
me to talk about it. Doesn't bother me to talk about it. It is good, and the reason it's good is because what good it's done for me in my life, and so in our family's life, I should say.
tell me more about that. I would love to know more about that part of the story too.
So one of the things that um, one of the big changes for me, well, let me tell a few like unbelievable stories. So one of the stories is after the fire, you couldn't find any place around to rent or to stay. Like I said, we were like 100 miles away in a hotel. We were there for a few weeks, and by total luck, I was able to find room in a hotel in Chico. And we, but it was not like it wasn't a long-term stay and it wasn't promised. So almost every day we had to leave our room and go to another room. And so it was like, and the hotel was like old McDonald's farm. I mean, people had come off of Paradise with their animals, with their dogs, with their cats. I saw a pig walking down the hallway. I mean, someone brought their pig with them. And we're all just like extending grace because like we just tried to make it out of town with what we had. And so, every day we would load up our stuff, which would fit into a box, and we would move it down the hall or a few levels down and get into our new room. And we wouldn't know how long we would stay there. It was just like we were just grateful to have something. One of the cool stories, we actually ended up finding a rental just by total happenstance. And it was not ideal, but it did have a washing machine and it did have a dryer. And so we became like the laundromat for our high school staff, like the people that we worked really close with at the church. They would come and wash their clothes. I mean, it sounds like such a simple thing, but when you don't have that, and then the laundromats are completely packed because you got everyone from Paradise trying to use the same ones in Chico, like to have access to a washing machine and a dryer was like a huge deal. So we basically just were able to find a rental that had a washing machine and a dryer and just use that as a way to serve our people, which was a blast. Another huge story is we ended up getting kicked out of that rental because the owner of that home, the price, the market in Chico spiked so high that the landlord called us one day and said, "I'm so sorry, but and I know your situation, but there's no way that I could ever get as much for that rental property as I could get right now. And so I'm going to put it on the market." And so, just when we thought we had like some security and some safety and some normalcy, we got booted out. And so we ended up staying in another apartment, very short term. And during that time, I had seen an ad on Craigslist for a rental. And so I drove over to it and I looked at it. I was like, this would actually serve our family very well, but more importantly, it would probably serve the high school staff that I was working with very well. And so I just sat there one evening in like, parked right next to the place, is like pleading, like, Lord, if you can make a way, make a way. And sorry to get emotional, but that to me was like a really special when I look back on it. Because when I called on that specific place, they almost laughed. They're like, we should just take that off. Like you're number 28 on the list. There's so many people that would like to have that rental. And so you know, I just considered it a lost cause at that point. And probably 2.5, maybe 3 months later, I get a call out of the blue, and it's from that company. And they said, "You'll never believe it, but all 28 people that were ahead of you, they either decided to move out of state, or for one reason or another, they no longer need the rental. By chance, would you still be interested in that?" And it was like, I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, all I could do is be like, "Thank you, Lord." Like, I consider that like a prayer that you answered, and the answer was no. And I was on to other things, and here you were in the background being faithful, and I didn't even know it. And so that was just an absolute blessing. When I got emotional there because I think about it, I remember like how desperate I was outside that house, that I knew nothing about except for what I could see on the exterior. And I just knew it could be something that would bring some hope back to the people that I love. And I considered it a loss. I didn't think it was going to happen. And then, miracles still do happen. Um, and so fortunately we were able to move there. It's nice. It's nice when you move because you don't have a lot to move after you lose everything. So we were able to move. That is one benefit. You don't have to move all your junk. So, we moved in there and tried to create a home out of that place, and we lived in there for a couple years, I'd say. About a year and probably a year and 4 months is what that looked like. So, and then we ended up getting a place in Chico. We ended up finding a place, so that was good. But yeah, that's probably the big thing. I think another huge story that came from it is I told you I coached basketball at Paradise High for 18 years, and one of my former basketball players had graduated and come back to Paradise, and he actually opened up a fitness gym in Paradise. Well, during the fire, he lost his gym and all of his equipment, and he had a wife and kids that he had to provide for right away. And he got into, believe it or not, he got into the solar industry. And solar out here in California is a
Mm.
really big deal because our utility rates are one of the highest in the nation. And now we lived in Paradise, and after the fire, they went through and probably 80% of the trees they cut down. So this community that was once covered in a canopy of shade is now wide open and fully exposed to the sun. And I just happened to see my former player at lunch one day, and he was like, "Hey, coach, how's it going?" We kind of reconnected, and obviously when you reconnect with people in your community, you start talking about the fire, and he started talking about the loss of his home, the loss of his business, and how life, flipped his world upside down. And he's like, I actually got into the solar industry. He's like, Coach, like everyone in town knows who you are. And this town that was once covered in shade is wide open to the sun, and people are already upset with the utility company. He's like, all I'm doing is I'm just walking around and talking to people I already know and just seeing if they'd be open to the idea of paying less for the same power. And the homes that had survived, they were all about not paying the utility company more because they had claimed responsibility for the fire. And then by that point, there was people that were in the rebuild process. They had started, the process of construction and all that. And so having conversations with those types of people, they were fully on board with taking advantage of the sun rather than paying the utility company. And he just said, Ryan, you should consider doing this because everyone in town knows who you are, and we could be a part of bringing hope back to paradise. And that phrase that he used, like, just latched onto me. I mean, it just latched on. I don't know why. It just latched on me. I was like, yeah, I do want to be a part of bringing hope back to my community. That's what I'm about. I'm a community guy. Like, I'm a youth pastor here, and my role at the church had changed to being a community outreach. I was now a part of community outreach, which was a huge blessing because the needs of the people of Paradise were like more than you could imagine. And so, but that idea of bringing hope back to Paradise really latched onto me. So I just pursued that further, and it actually turned into like a career change for me. And I never envisioned that. I envisioned serving as a pastor, in my local community. I envisioned doing that for the rest of my life. And this was just an opportunity that was presented to me to like bring hope back to Paradise that I never would have envisioned. And I would say that that job change it's changed me as a person. It's grown me as a leader. It's it made me like bet on myself, and it made me like rise up for my family and basically prove like, you know what? We're not going to be whiners about this. We're not going to complain about this about the rest of our lives. I'm going to lead the way here, and I'm going to go out and do something really difficult. I'm going to start a brand new thing. I'm going to become a salesman, and I've never been a salesman. I'm going to go door to door. I'm going to knock on doors in my 40s, and I'm going to prove that I can like rebuild our life and rebuild our family from the ground up. And I'm going to do this, and you watch. And so the next few years were me just proving that I was willing to go out and do difficult things and show my family like we don't quit. We don't make excuses. We fight, right? And we cry, and that's okay. And there's all the emotion, and we're not like negating any of that. But we will move forward. We're going to move forward as a family. We're going to support each other. I'm going to dive into something completely new. I need your guys' support. And I felt their support was like, it was just a really good thing for our family. So, like, when I said earlier, like, that fire is probably the best thing that's happened to us, that's what I'm referring to. It's like the silver lining in all of it was we bonded closer as a family. I dove into something completely new, and that changed my life. And naive me, I thought, oh, cool, I can bring back hope to Paradise. Well, 90% of Paradise moved. They were now buying homes in all the surrounding communities and around the US. But when they found out I was in the solar industry, they were calling me. Hey, we just bought a home in Chico. Can you get us an estimate? We just bought a home in Gridley. Can you get us an estimate? In Yuba City and Redding and all over the place. And I was like, yeah, I thought I was bringing hope back to Paradise, but now it's like it's affecting all these other communities. And then once I served them well, they would tell their friends and their neighbors, and I would do more houses on those streets. And so my impact there just became a lot greater than I ever would have imagined, which is again, I just think of so I actually got an award in the solar industry given to the top 1% of people nationwide, which is so funny because I come from a community that was literally in the shade. Like I didn't even know somebody that had solar. That's how foreign solar was to me. And so it's been a total life change and just something I felt like just God just put that right in my lap. And ironically, he used one of my former basketball players to call me into doing that. And it's just been such a blessing.
I know through the story of the career pivot, right? That is always something that feels phenomenal anyway when we feel like we've chosen a path and it changes.
Yeah.
But in the context of the many more changes that you were experiencing at that particular time, um, I've heard you mention like rebuilding in different ways, like rebuilding social connections or rebuilding physical structures. But what did rebuilding look like? Um, Whether it was, did people, like you said, some people didn't move back to Paradise. Like what was it like to sort of, did people have a hard time feeling safe again after a fire of that magnitude? Uh, were you still what was it like to still be engaged in ministry after something like that occurred, or just what were the in between spaces like for you and your family as you're rebuilding what your day-to-day lives look like? That was a
Mhm.
really broad question, so any particular
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Well, I'll cover one of those. I'll get to all of them, but I want to cover one thing like first and foremost. So I'm not working at a church full time, but I never left ministry. And I want to make sure that I'm really clear on that because I'm a big believer that it doesn't matter if you're getting paid by a local church or not. Like ministry is ministry. And so people ask me all the time, "Hey Ryan, do you miss ministry?" No, I don't. I never left it. My ministry is now my other job. That is now my mission field. And I've got plenty of opportunity there. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that I have there. And so that my mindset is I never left ministry. That like I still am a pastor at heart. I still am a shepherd at heart. I still care for and love people. And I try to do that well. It's not perfect, but I try to do that well. And so yeah, I'm not employed full time by a church in Paradise, but I never left ministry. In terms of rebuilding, I think the rebuilding for us was not a physical rebuilding of a home. It was just rebuilding the things that are priority. It was like a mindset shift. Like we had just lost everything and realized it was just stuff. Like that was probably a big lesson. Now there are some things that we lost that I really, really miss. But at the end of the day, it's just stuff. The things that made it out of that are the things that matter. And that is my wife and kids. And then my family made it out, my extended family, and then Jessica's extended family. They all made it out. that's what's important. You can always rebuild a home. You can always, replace stuff. Some things you can't replace. You can't replace the wedding photos. You can't replace the photos of your kids and their upbringing. Fortunately, we have social media, so we can go back to some of the stuff that we had posted regardless. But yeah, there's some things that are not replaceable, but we've found that that's okay. Rebuilding for us was more like, hey, how can we be aligned and unified as a family and support each other through this? That to me is what, like, that's the hard work of rebuilding. And that's the hard work of love as well, because everyone goes through that grieving process differently. I was at a totally different space and stage in my life than my daughter, who was in middle school and lost all sense of connection with her friends. Um, things were just different. Schools were different. Uh, there was stuff that was happening virtually. Like it's crazy because then right after that came on the heels of that was COVID. Well, fortunately for the people that went through Paradise, the students had already kind of adopted that in some degree, and because other people, when they converted over to virtual learning, well, Paradise already had to do that because they didn't have a community to go to. So fortunately, there was parts of that. But yeah, for my middle school daughter, having to like not be around her friends and friends moving away, like there was just it's just a lot, So it's just kind of rebuilding looked like what does it look like to love each other really well and give each other grace to grieve and be upset, be angry, and be okay with that. That's probably what rebuilding looked like for us.
I hear themes of what you've been talking about that resonate with the sign that's behind you. Choose the better story. Can you tell me about that and how that's come to, like, what that's come to mean to you?
Yeah. So when I was a youth pastor, one of my really good youth pastor friends, named Travis, he'd been in youth ministry for a long time. He's like a youth ministry guru, and he spoke at a camp one year, and it just happened that it was a camp called Hume Lake. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a huge camp out here in California. Hume Lake is known for having great weather, but also really fantastic thunderstorms. And it just so happens that one day, during free time, we were playing volleyball, and a massive summer thunderstorm came through. It was like hailing, lightning, like all the excitement that you could think of. And it was pouring rain, pouring rain, it turned to hail. Well, during that storm, a lot of people were just headed for cover, under the overhangs or in buildings. And we're literally the whole camp of like 1,000 people were just like looking out of windows or under overhangs, waiting for this storm to pass. But there was this group of guys that were out on the lawn playing spike ball. They didn't run for cover. And they were just having a great time out there. And it was like the whole camp was watching them. It was like they were clueless to the fact that there was a major storm that was blowing through. But they were just out there continuing to have fun. And pretty soon they started to like belly slide, like slide on the water because there was so much water built up on the lawns. They were just sliding on it. And Travis, the speaker of the camp, my friend, he said, it looks like they're choosing the better story today. While we were all huddled in safety, these guys were out there just having a time of adventure. And that phrase, because my wife was there talking with Travis as well, that like gripped me and Jessica. We're like, that is such a good phrase. We actually took that back and we made that a theme for our youth ministry for a year. And just so much good came from that. And so when we think of the fire, think back on the fire, it just became an opportunity for us to choose the better story. Like I said, we could have sat in a corner and whined about this for the rest of our life, but we don't think that's the better story. The better story was, what does it look like to rebuild? What does it look like to put our hope in God during that time? What does it look like to lean on His strength when we feel like we're completely sapped of our own? That's the better story. And so that's pretty much been our theme. That's carried our family through really difficult times. And it just so happens to be that the fire was one of those things that we had to deal with. And COVID was another one. We had to deal with that. We had to choose a better story during that time. We bought our home in Chico here right at the onset of COVID. And it was so weird because coming from Paradise where we had people to our place all the time, and now we lived in a community. It was like track houses, and our natural tendency is like, oh, we want to go and meet all of our neighbors, but everyone was kind of like, oh, it's COVID, like don't come talk to us. And it was just a bizarre time. But yeah, choosing the better story is just like, hey, there's a silver lining in everything. And even in the most awful of circumstances, there's a better story there somewhere. You can find a better story there somewhere. So it's just become a mindset that opportunity is available. If you're willing to take it, opportunity is there, even in the most awful of circumstances, even when it seems like disaster is like, the water level's up to here and it's seeming hopeless. It's like there is a better story there. And so let's chase after that.
I know I'm really struck by the name of the town of Paradise, right? That what that means for us and how we think of that term, and the fact that this is where you grew up. Like this is the place that kind of supported you through all these different life transitions, and the way that you keep giving back to your community even now. Um, what's it like for you to like I mean I guess you were already like in a you were already kind of like the one who propels the story forward, I guess is what like that's coming to mind for me is like you've been the one to shape the story for so many people.
Mhm.
Is there a sense of what that's been like for you to take on maybe not an entirely different role in that way because you were a coach and a youth minister, but to take on this new role of someone who is helping people shape and make meaning out of these events that have happened?
Yeah, I think just because of my own story, like I'll just go back to my new workplace at the solar company. Like there, you got people from all walks of life, right? And people that are doing really well in life, and you got people that are learning by the school of hard knocks. And I'm just finding like it's just such a refreshing place to be because to me it doesn't matter if you've learned by the school of hard knocks or if you're doing well in life. We all struggle through life. We all bump our way through. It's not perfect by any means, but this concept of choose the better story is it crosses the like it's like a bridge to whether you're a believer or you're not a believer. It's like that speaks. It speaks to a very wide audience, and I appreciate that phrase is very resourceful and very useful, whether you're a believer in God or you're not. Like there's still meaning there of choosing the better story. And I really, really appreciate that. I'm not sure if I answered your question really well there, though. Was that what you were
No.
after, or is it different?
I think I wonder how you're still mentoring and coaching people even
Mhm.
now, even if you're not in those roles you were in 2018.
Yeah, so I am doing that. I would say probably at the company that they would probably say I am the mentor of the people that work there. I am a coach that work there. I actually a recent adventure I'm on is I've been trained and equipped to be an executive coach. And so that's another thing that I'm doing as well. And what is that doing? That's basically just helping people accomplish their dreams. And so I am mentoring people towards the things that are really important to them. And that's like, to me, that's but what I like about solar is great for community impact. And what I like about coaching is now that provides another outlet for me to make individual impact. And I'm seeing substantial results come from one-to-one impact, which is an absolute blast. But whether it's like formal executive coaching or just coaching people within the business, absolutely. Like I'm there to serve people ultimately. Yeah, I need to make an income as well, but primary is like I exist to serve people. Like I said before, I never stopped ministry. Ministry is just part of who I am.
I keep thinking in my mind, and I'm a long way from any science class, That image they used to give us of when a fire burns, the soil is left richer afterward. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's an image that lands or not. And I'm just struck by the way you've highlighted how even after loss, you found a kind of a richness and a peace in your family, in
Mhm.
yourself, in your faith,
Yeah.
and in your community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also, in a weird way, I'd also say gratitude. Like there's a genuine sense of gratitude. So yeah, you asked earlier, is it weird for me to talk about the story? It's not because it's the overarching theme there is gratitude. Everything that I've like my personal journey has like I'm a different person because of that. Our family, like we are different people because of that. And I'm ministering in a totally different place. I'm in a different context now, and I'm so grateful for the people that God has like put in my sphere now that weren't in my sphere before. And so yeah, it's absolutely. It's just I have a genuine sense of gratitude when I look back. And it sounds weird because it's just such a it's something you wouldn't think would ignite a gratitude mindset, but that's that's my mindset. It's like I just look back on that. I'm really grateful for that season, what it taught us, the following months, the following years, how we've grown. Just so grateful for it.
I feel like I might be asking this different iterations of the same question, but if you um if you were in a position, it sounds like you maybe are in a position to offer people support when they're grieving a loss or they're facing a challenge, what are the things that you would impart to them or that you do impart to them as they're navigating, especially those early days when things seem so disorienting after we lose something or someone that's important to us?
Yeah. I think that, well, first of all, trauma happens, disasters happen. I don't like that it happens, but it is part of life. And so for those people that are going through, you feel like you're going through hell, right? Or you feel like you're just going through something that's like really shaking up your world. One is, I'm not going to say I understand because everyone's scenario is different. Uh, but I will say this, I feel like I can say this with confidence. God is so faithful. God is so undeniably faithful. And there were many times that I wondered, and then I'm looking back, it's just you see his fingerprints. His fingerprints are just all over the story. And there's no denying it. His fingerprints are just all over the story. And so while you're in the middle of it, it probably feels like, God, where are you? Why do you seem silent? Do you understand what I'm going through? I feel like I'm alone here. And that's a part of grieving, and that's okay. That's normal. Lean into that. Don't avoid it. And it's okay for you to feel all the feels. It's okay to be angry. It's okay for you to be angry at God. He can handle that. He can absolutely handle that. But at the end of the day, know that he's not going to waste that pain. He's not going to waste it. He's actually going to use it. And so if you have those lenses on, um, I've got one of the people in our coaching space lost his home, ironically, in the LA fires last year. And he had a coach that had said something profound to him. And his coach just threw out this idea and said, "Hey, I just want you to try on these lenses. And you could be really upset with me. And if you are, that's okay. But just try these lenses on." And he said, "What if, what if the fire is the best thing that ever happened to you? How would your, how would your mindset change if the fire was the best thing that ever happened to you?" And that's maybe a question I would ask, whatever your circumstances that you're going through, which again, trauma is awful, disaster is awful. I'm not discounting that, but it's a question I would consider someone to pose in the right time. I'm not going to say that like right afterwards, by the way. And I definitely wouldn't say that without having like relational equity with somebody. But if you're listening to this and you are going through it right now and you're frustrated and you don't understand and you wish you had answers and you don't have those answers and you feel alone in it and you feel stuck, I'll just throw this out to you and I'll just take the risk here. You can be upset with me if you want to, but I'm curious, what if what you're going through is the best thing that could have happened in your life? What if? And if you can go through whatever you're going through with those lenses that it's potentially the best thing for you, then it like makes room for hope. It makes room for, okay, there's a purpose behind this. It makes room for, okay, God still is on the move, even though he might feel like he's silent. It leaves room for, okay, God can still be faithful even in the middle of the storm. It just leaves so much room for that. And to me, that is, I mean, going back to the sign, that is the better story, is understanding that God's ahead of this. God's not left me. He's not forsaken me. He's actually going to use this for good. He's not going to waste the pain. He's there with me in the pain, even though it may not feel like it. And it's possible this might be the best thing for me.
I love that. I will absolutely hold on to that. That's phenomenal. That's a great perspective.
Hey,
What important?
I had
Go ahead.
another story. Can I share one story that was like
Of course.
another miracle story? So, because I was working at the church, we had Samaritan's Purse came to the area, and they would actually go up to Paradise and help people sift through the ashes of the remains of their homes. And right after the fire, um, like when we first had the opportunity, because nobody was able to go back to Paradise for quite some time. But when we got the green light to go back to Paradise, our family went up to our home. Very sobering, by the way, to drive into our driveway and experience that for the first time. Like we had seen one of the pastors that I worked with, he had sent me a photo. He texted me a photo and just said, "I'm so sorry, Ryan." And he sent me a photo because I was wondering if our house made it or not. There was a time, so they had a fire map of Paradise, and there was actually a window of time where our house was in a sliver of this fire map that looked like it survived. And so we had been preparing ourselves and our extended family for, hey, because everyone else, they were in areas where it did not look good. It looked like everything was lost, and ours was in a sliver that looked like it survived. And so we were preparing ourselves for, hey, we're going to turn our house into a hotel. We're going to have all our family, anybody that needs a place. We're just like we're going to be a place of ministry. But when I got that picture, it was so. Um, oh man, I just remember seeing that for the first time, and just like my heart dropped. Like, oh man, we thought we were in the safe zone. And just seeing the picture of our home, it was devastating, obviously. But then to go there and see it, I've got guilt because I told my son, "Hey, Jackson, park in the garage." Well, when the house got on fire, guess what? His vehicle caught on fire. And if I would have just said, park it in the driveway or park it, we had a basketball court in the backyard, park it on the basketball court because there's like nothing around it. It's possible that it would have survived. But just seeing all that for the first time it was wild. Well, um, I had gotten my in-laws had a houseboat, and one time I had reached up on the houseboat to kind of swing inside, and I had caught my ring on my finger on the top of the houseboat, and it dug into my finger, and I was like, okay, that's not good. And so I'd actually switched over to a silicone ring, which if you're watching, you can see I'm wearing one right now. Well, that was one of the things that was a bummer to lose in the fire. And so I went back and, tried looking through all the rubble to see if we could find the ring. Well, I had spent a couple weeks going with Samaritan's Purse to go out and sift a bunch of people's homes. They would just sign up and, hey, we lost these types of valuables. If can this group come out and see if we can reclaim any of them? And it literally was sifting through ashes. That's really all you're doing, and rarely could we find anything. But there was a guy there from Samaritan's Purse that he's used to going from disaster to disaster. That's what he does. And I just shadowed him for a bit, and he taught me so much about fires, about structures when they burn and how they typically fall, and how there's usually clues when you get to a burnt up house. There's clues of like how things fell. And so after going out with this guy for a couple of weeks and like sifting through other people's stuff, I went back to my property, I went back to my site, and I went there just after it had rained. And I went and looked at the place that I dug before looking for the ring, and I realized based on what I realized I was digging in the wrong spot. And I'm not kidding you. I like took what I had learned from the guy from Samaritan's Purse, reconfigured where I knew the ring was in the house, and now with what I knew, I took like 4 steps over and looked down on the ground, and my ring, I'm not kidding, was laying right on the top. That the rain had like pushed the ashes away, and I literally looked down and I could see a circle. And I just could not believe it. I just literally leaned down, picked it up, and I turned it on its side so I could, I mean, because it's got like, it's got some specific markings on it. And I was like, no way. Um, you know, totally black. I never got it cleaned. I'm going to keep it that way forever because it's just such a great story of like, what I learned through that, like helping other people actually allowed me to find what was meaningful to me, which is really, really cool.
I love that story too. That is a great miracle. Ryan, are there questions I haven't asked? Are there parts of the story you haven't gotten to tell yet? Or are there other things connected to the arc of this part of your journey that are still important to share?
I think the thing that maybe comes to mind is there's still people that went through that experience that do not want to go back to paradise. Like it was so haunting to them, they won't even go back to the community. Um, and I extend grace to that. I mean, because some people literally made it out by the skin of their teeth, and so going back to that is just like it's the idea of going back there is just super traumatic. But I would also say this, that one of the things about the fire happening in November was all the ground was charred. And it wasn't just Paradise. The fire had spread well beyond Paradise to, some of the local communities nearby. Um, not into the housing communities, but like to the fields, right? And so it was interesting how in late February and early March, fresh green grass started to sprout. And we would commute to church and we could see the fresh green grass. We could see new life springing up from the disaster, from the pain, from the trauma. And that was a beautiful thing to see. I'd also say like something that I haven't covered is there's so many people that have decided to go back and rebuild in paradise. So for me, going back to my community and seeing it being rebuilt is just such a blessing to see that unfold. I mean, it does not look the same at all because all the trees are gone. It's like a totally different beast. But in again, the solar industry, I'll go up to Paradise probably once a week to have an appointment up there, and I'll meet with people that have moved from out of the area to this community because they see such
Oh,
beauty in it. And so that's a part that I haven't shared is like it has become very appealing for people because people could get property for fairly cheap. When you're buying property in a community that's like been decimated, you can get property cheap, and people took advantage of that, and they're absolutely loving it. I would say like the heart of paradise still remains. One of the phrases that came up is like, paradise stronger or ridge stronger. Ridge is like referring to everyone that's on the hill, Paradise and Magalia area. And so it is a very, very strong community. And the fact that a lot of them went through something horrific together, it just bonded them. And so I'm just so proud to still be a part, even though I don't live there right now. I'm so proud to be close to that community and seeing it rebuilding. I mean, every time I go up to Paradise, I see the start of a new home, or people leveling land to get ready to rebuild. And the neighborhood that I lived in, we sold our property this in July of last year, which was really, really weird for us. And a new home was built there, and I think someone just moved in like 2 months ago. So seeing, new life and new people and a community that just really cares for each other, that is the beauty of what's going on there as well.
Ryan, this is a spectacular story and one which I think will probably already has helped so many people, but will continue to help so many people. And you and your family are, holding this banner of hope for anybody who's gone through loss. And
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but again, there, when, when you go through, when life like punches you in the throat, there's still ways that you can choose the better story in that.
If people wanted to learn more about your story, if they were curious about coaching, where would they find you, or how would they, what would be the best way for them to know about more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, social media is an easy place to find me. Like, it's Ryan Wright official is like my social media handles. And yeah, send me a DM. I'm happy to respond. If anybody else wants me to tell my story, I'm happy to do that. I'm not, it doesn't like weird me out to tell it. And some people it would make sense to, and some people it wouldn't. But man, especially if you've gone through something similar, like it's possible people would listen to this podcast and they went through the recent fires in LA. And if you need to talk to somebody that's been through that and you need some hope, man, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect with you. I mean, I would love that. I would absolutely count that a blessing because there had been a fire in Santa Rosa a couple years before our fire. And ironically, a lot of those people came to our community because they had kind of been through it and they were recovering and they were a source of hope for us and our community and for me and our family. And so, yeah, if I can in turn do that or be that for somebody else, I'm more than happy to do that.
That's wonderful. I have no doubt this story is going to continue to find its way to the people who need it. You have a remarkable ability to capture what that means to choose the better story.
I love it. If that's what I can do, then mission accomplished.
Well, it's been so good to talk with you today. Are there any final words of wisdom or anything else that you'd like to offer folks before we wrap up?
I think that I'll just double down on what I said before is like even even in the worst possible storm that you can imagine, or even the unimaginable life circumstance, God is faithful.